This video is designed to help you to integrate your reading of a range of sources into your academic writing. To do this, we will use a short piece of text on the curriculum from Armitage et al., Teaching and Training in Post-Compulsory Education, which is available both in the college library and online as an e-book from the LRC Resources section. One way that reading can be integrated into your writing is through the use of signal words to introduce, extend and compare and contrast ideas, so that's what we'll be focusing on here. Note how this section of the chapter begins. It orientates the reader by referring back to summarise what has been covered so far, and then using this question here, it points forward to the focus of the next section. This is a good technique for your own writing, so that you lead the reader through a carefully structured argument. So we now know that this section will discuss what some authors have written about the curriculum and are looking out to see which authors they are and what they have to say. Next, we see two of these authors introduced. So we have Goodson here and then Stenhouse here. And note too that the date of publication for each author is added directly after the author's surname and in brackets. In terms of signal phrases, we see here that Goodson makes the interesting point that. So we know that we're about to read a summary of what Goodson says about the curriculum. Then we see a further signal word, however, which usually hints to the reader that what is about to follow is something that is in contrast to what has previously been said. Here, though, it turns out that Stenhouse will address some questions that Goodson hasn't addressed, so that the signal word in this case points to an extension of what has been discussed above. Moving on, we're looking for more signal words, and we get one here when we see the word thus. What that means is that we have just heard a definition of curriculum and that this will now be expanded further. So here, the concept of a regular course of study at school or university is explored in more detail in the remainder of the paragraph. If we move on down, we see that Stenhouse offers a second view of the curriculum. And here is our signal phrase. Moving on to the next page, here is our second signal phrase in this paragraph. He also points out. And this alerts us to a further point made by Stenhouse, thus expanding his definition. So if we wanted to summarise Stenhouse's point of view ourselves, we would need to ensure we included these two aspects in our paraphrase. Here then, we have looked at how the writer of this chapter has understood Stenhouse's view of the curriculum, and it's a good example of how to refer to and explain the view of another author in your writing. There are two key strategies to use. Firstly, summarise the main points of the author you're referring to, and secondly, use signal words and phrases to lead your reader through a logical series of points. Note as we move on in the passage that another author, or in this case authors, Taylor and Richards, are introduced. The signal phrase here, on the other hand, suggests that we're about to hear a contrasting view to that expressed in the summary of Stenhouse above. And that's first introduced in this direct quote here. Note that direct quotes are used fairly sparingly, but it's good to introduce the odd one when it seems to be pertinent to do so. And that's what the authors have done here. And then we see in the next paragraph the signal phrase that introduces the specific argument that Taylor and Richards are making that this author wants us to focus on. Note too that the next sentence begins with the word thus. So the first sentence of this paragraph gives a brief summary of Taylor and Richards' position, and the rest of the paragraph goes on to expand it further. Note too that the paragraph ends with a summary of their view, signalled by the phrase the key issue. So in this short paragraph, we can see a really neat structure that you can use in your own writing. A topic sentence that introduces the paragraph, an expansion of the main ideas in the next couple of sentences, and then a final concluding sentence that summarises the position of these authors. We now come to the final paragraph here, the concluding paragraph of this section. Note how it draws together the main authors discussed above. It mentions each one of them. So here we've got Goodson, and then we've got Stenhouse, and then Taylor and Richards. And what the author of this text does is shows how they have synthesised the ideas in their own words to inform their own argument. So in pulling all the authors together, the writer briefly draws out some of the similarities and differences between them, a really good example of critical analysis. So the writer refers back to Goodson, then moves on to summarise what Stenhouse and Taylor and Richards have in common, before the word however here singles out an area in which Stenhouse differs from Taylor and Richards. And then we end with this summary sentence just here, right at the end there. And that notes the importance of consistency in our definition of the term curriculum, suggesting that this will be reflected in subsequent sections of the chapter. So this final paragraph draws all the threads together before moving on to the next main section. So I hope this video has been helpful in just getting you to think about how you might incorporate your reading into your writing using one or more authors, thinking about synthesising their ideas, comparing and contrasting them, and using signal words and phrases to help lead the reader through a sequence of logical points that create your argument. Thanks for watching.